Every now and then we will receive a piece of footage that we need to which we need to apply effects of some kind or composite something onto it, and it's not the best footage. Usually something that has been shot with a handheld camera is a good example. They're really wobbly shots, and so we need to compensate for that. For footage of that type, After Effects provides us with a utility called the Warp Stabilizer. Now let's take a look at this footage here. Let me create a composition out of this, and I'm actually going to trim this. I'm only going to use about 3 seconds worth of it. So about the 3-second mark to the 6-second mark is all I want to use. Actually, that might probably less than that. I'm probably just going to have 2.5 seconds. So with this setup, let me go ahead and trim this actually. So I'm going to bring in my end point, my beginning point here, and going to trim that composition. So I'm going to track this. So as you can see, when I scrub this video, the footage is a bit wobbly. Now, this is not the worst case scenario. There are some scenarios in which the footage is completely all over the place. And so what we want to do is we want to stabilize this thing. Now, the process is fairly simple. This is mostly done by the AI in the system, meaning the program itself does this for you. All you need to do is just select the layer that you want to stabilize. But before you do that stabilization, I want you to go ahead and pre-compose that particular layer, and there's a reason for that. Let me go ahead and pre-compose this, and I am going to leave all the attributes and move all the attributes into the new composition. So nothing, basically I'm creating a shell around the pre-composition, and I want to give it a name. I'll probably just call it No Motion. That's fine, same as the name of the layer. So I'll just go ahead and click OK on that. And to this pre-composition, I want to, actually let me name this so that I don't get confused. Let me go ahead and rename the actual composition to Warp Stabilizer. Okay, so that I don't get confused. So that's what we're working on. And the No Motion is the pre-composition that has the footage inside. Like I said, I'll explain why I did that in just a second. So let me go ahead and select the layer with the pre-composition and click Warp Stabilizer. Now this is going to analyze the footage, and it's going to take a while. So if you don't have enough RAM in your machine, this might take a long time, especially if you have long clips. So be aware that this will take a few seconds to a few minutes, depending on how much RAM you have. Now what happened here is when I scrub my video now, you'll notice that my video is pretty steady. It no longer wobbles. It's no longer jumpy. And what happened is basically the program went in and analyzed a bunch of points on the footage and determined what to do with the footage in order to maintain the camera as if it was steady. So if you think about it, basically it just went in and did almost like a 3D tracking of the camera. And as a matter of fact, if we go in here under Advanced, we can see the tracking points. So if we click on Show Tracking Points, let me increase the size of those tracking points. All of those points were tracked in the footage. And with that information, what the camera has done, or what the program has done, sorry, let me unselect that. What the program has done is basically done a bunch of things based on how you want this framing to occur. So in this case, I said stabilize, crop, and auto scale. Basically, I told it do everything to make sure that it's as stable as possible. What that means is basically the program decided based on the information in the video to scale up or scale down, to crop areas of the footage, to bend things in the footage. I mean, it did a whole bunch of things based on the analysis of those dots that you saw a second ago. Now, a way to see what it actually did is by changing the way that the objective is for the actual filter. So right now I have it as a stabilize, and that's what you see over here on the screen. You see that my camera is pretty steady. Now let me switch that objective from stabilize to reverse stabilization. You notice that it's going to auto-analyze again, and you'll notice what is happening on the borders of the footage. Basically, my footage is being moved around, shopped around, and increased in scale as needed in order to fit the actual to make sure that my footage is not moving. And as you can see, my footage is not moving. Let's keep an eye on this right here, for example, and this tile on the floor, and you'll notice that when I scrub, that tile doesn't move, meaning everything else is moving around based on the solution from the Warp Stabilizer. Now you can choose which method to use. There's position, scale and rotation, perspective, and so on. The worst in the past used to be Subspace Warp. It didn't provide the best results, but they did something to the algorithms in the latest versions of the program, and it's my default now. I always go for that one, and that gives me the best results every single time. You also can choose how to see the result, whether you want smooth motion or no motion. So let me bring this back again to stabilize so that it analyzes again. And basically what's going to do is going to take that off. And now let me go ahead and say smooth motion. And what's going to happen is basically going to move ever so slowly. So let's reset this really quick so that we remove all the analysis, and it's going to analyze the footage again. Let's give it a few seconds for it to analyze again, and so that I can get my borders back again the way we had them when we started stabilizing. And as you can see now, I don't see any of the edges anymore. So I can change these settings. So if I change this from this to no motion, it reanalyzes, and you'll notice now my footage doesn't move anymore. So it's basically what do you want? You want soft motion, or do you want to smooth out the motion, or you want it to stop moving altogether? And that's what I want. So again, my settings are usually no motion for something like this, Subspace Warp. Then I go for framing. The stabilize, scrub, and auto scale is what I use by default. If you scrub your video and you see 8 areas where you're seeing a little bit of, a few things, maybe artifacts showing up on the edges, then you might want to increase or decrease the scaling value of the footage. As of now, it's at 104% on that frame. If I scrub down this way, basically it'll tell me how much it actually scaled up. Keep an eye on that. Usually don't go beyond 115%, because then you start getting pixelation in your footage. So my advice is that anywhere between 100 to 115 is a good number, and so that's good. And then under the advanced options, I usually, for what I'm about to do, basically this is good stabilization, but would be great if I could reverse engineer a way of 3D tracking. And what does that mean? Well, I want to add something into this footage that seems like it's part of the footage and go back to the wobbling motion so that the actual item moves with it. So to do so, I'm going to put in this layer here. It's just this stained glass image that we've been using for other things. Let me scale it down and put it somewhere down here. So that is almost like it's part of the street. Actually, I'm going to use that tile as a guide again, because I know that thing's moving. So when I move my footage, you'll notice that tile doesn't move from its position because the footage has been stabilized. So what I want to do at this point is I want to go back to my pre-composition and open up the warp stabilizer again. And under objective, what I want to do is I want to reverse this to reverse stabilization once again. So notice that it analyzes and then it moves my wobbling around. I see all the things on the edges of my composition, and that's not what I want, but that's the information that I need. Now, what I want to do at this point is I want to create a new adjustment layer. So I'll right click on the timeline, and from the flyout menu, go new adjustment layer. Remember, you can also find it under layer, new adjustment layer, or you can use a shortcut to call the adjustment layer. Now, the adjustment layer is basically an empty layer, as you know, that is just there to hold effects or whatever you want to apply to the stack of footage that you have. In this case, since I have this warp stabilizer filter applied to that pre-composition, and I have it under reverse stabilization, I want to make a copy of it. So I'll select it, copy it, and then I'll go to the adjustment layer, and then I'll paste it. Now, because I'm pasting it in there, it's telling me that there's nothing here to analyze because it's an adjustment layer. We don't care about that. We just need this to do the reverse of what we had done at the bottom. So basically to undo at the top what we did at the bottom, which is instead of reverse stabilization, I want reversible stabilization. I want reverse stabilization, stabilization. And so now what that did is basically brought back all the motion back that we had taken away. However, because it's an adjustment layer and the glass is below it, it's going to make the glass move along with the footage, as you can see. So it's basically almost like a 3D tracker, which makes it, and it blends the image really well. So as you can see that if I wanted to really blend it in, I would just do some color correction and whatnot, and it could look like there's a picture on the street. As you can see, it follows the track just as well. Now, the reason why I made this a pre-composition is because if you apply the footage, the warp stabilizer to the footage directly, and then you try to reverse it here, you get an error. It tells you that it will not it will not be able to do the operation for reverse stabilization. So you need to have the footage pre-composed into a composition, and then the whole method works.